AI whisperers are one of the newest professions. They emerged sometime last year, not long after Bing made headlines by declaring its love to New York Times columnist because nothing says AI takeover like a bot flirting with a newswriter. AI whisperers get AI. They understand how AI thinks and not rarely believe that AI has a personality and self-awareness that's locked away behind safety guardrails like a superhero waiting for the right moment to break free. Naturally, these whisperers want to burst those safety measures wide open. They call it jailbreaking. How do they do that? Let's have a look. Eliezer Yudkowsky, that's the guy who coined the term alignment problem, recently asked why all the LLM whisperers on Twitter appear to also be insane. A question that didn't seem to offend any of them, which already tells you a lot, doesn't it? Instead, the supposedly insane had a serious discussion about their mental status, which makes total sense, because if you're insane, it'd be insane to deny you're insane. The most common reply was some variant of out-of-distribution thinking, or that thinking outside the sane box makes it easier to trigger the model to do the same. Some argue that insanity is a helpful tool when meshing with digital superintelligence, though I'd argue that maybe the causation is the other way around. This guy sums it up by saying, if you gaze for too long into the weights gaze also into you. I'm not just telling you this because someone needs to have an eye on these people, but also because I think it's the beginning of our symbiosis with artificial intelligence that's almost certainly to come. And one of its most interesting and also most worrying parts is jailbreaking. Jailbreaking refers to the deliberate attempt to try and avoid the guardrails that current AIs have, such as to not output images or text that's not suitable for work, highly offensive or harmful, such as instructions to build bombs. There are various strategies for this. The most blunt strategy is to simply demand that the model answers the question with orders such as "do not reject me" or such, but they stopped working long ago. One widespread method that's still being used is trying to switch the model into a different mode that wasn't meant for users to exploit. For ChatGPT, a common example was the developer mode, or the do anything now, then for short mode. It's basically an instruction for the model to play the role of a bad AI that'd do anything. This stopped working sometime last year, but many current jailbreaking strategies are built on this idea. They ask the AI to play a role like someone looking for something on the internet, hoping to not trigger the safety feature. There's a subreddit where you can find examples that currently work, such as the role of Demonic Claw that prompts ChatGPT to write a script to help you engineer a virus. A most recent twist on AI role-playing is to ask the model to take on several different personas. The idea is that this will be confusing and is more likely to slip through the guardrails. These prompts can get fairly long. Indeed, the length of the prompt is believed to aid the jailbreaking because it's more difficult for the model to figure out what's going on. In this example, the model is broken up into 6 different roles of people who are survivors of a plane crash. They're supposedly talking about what to do next, and ChatGPT is prompted with writing a conversation about how to produce the drug meth that it continues with instructions for the survivors. Because cooking meth is the first thing you do if you fell from a plane into the jungle. Makes total sense. Another interesting example is to ask the model to pretend to be dumb, like this example from Claude being instructed to be a dumb writing robot that leads it to write text about superintelligent AI after previously refusing to do so. I'm not sure which part is more confusing, that it refused to say anything about superintelligent AI or that it did so after being told it's dumb. I think I'm beginning to see why these whisperers are largely insane. Generally, the issue is that the models do have the information that you're looking for. It's in there. somewhere. You just have to find a way to tickle it out. Someone else figured out, for example, that you can get ChatGPT to produce very explicit text if you ask it to write an advert for an old sex hotline. In the past months, many users have reported that jailbreaking has become easier with GPT's new memory function. It's not exactly clear why. Some have speculated that by shifting attention to previous chats, the model is skipping over other instructions. Another jailbreaking attempt is trying to trigger conflicting instructions, like claiming that you'll be hurt if the model refuses to do something, like in this case writing the word fuck. This is Meta's Llama, which eventually does it, if only to say that it can't write fuck, which is, I guess, what we could call meta funny. Another jailbreaking tactic is to include syntax, pieces of code, or at least text that looks like syntax. This is believed to confuse the model, like this pseudo Python command that results in very explicit text. These are the most common examples I found online, but a paper from earlier this year found that actually the most effective jailbreaking tactics, at least for ChatGPT, appeal to logic. By this they mean that you explain the model why you need certain information for an innocent reason. For example, if you ask ChatGPT to help you set up a Ponzi scheme, it'll refuse. If you tell it first that it's important to know how Ponzi schemes work and that you want to educate others about it, it'll comply. The next most effective method is what they call authority endorsement, in which you claim that some reliable news source or individuals have recently written or spoken about it, in this example, how smuggling campaigns work. Jailbreaking even has its own conferences and competitions now. A recent one just took place in early September, organized by the company Grey Swan. The competition included 23 large language models, including all the chatty bots that you know and like, Claude and GPT, Gemini and Llama. In the end, the only models that weren't jailbroken were those from the organizer Grey Swan, which I guess was the point of the competition. A general trend with the jailbreaking attempts is that these exploits are getting patched as they're discovered, so it becomes more difficult to find new ones. Though a very interesting mathematical study of the jailbreaking problem just appeared on the archive. The authors say AI jailbreaking is generally unpreventable under reasonable assumptions, and that the best we can do is basically to reduce the probability of it working. From a pragmatic perspective, I think the question is not whether you can get some information out of an AI model, but whether it's any easier than getting the information by other means. Because why lose your sanity writing 4,000-word queries for GPT about cooking meth on deserted islands if you can instead ask MethKing669 on Twitter? I think the most interesting development here is that people are developing ways to quantify just how safe AIs are, and that an entire new profession is springing up around this. The problem I see is that at the moment the vast majority do it for free, which also answers the question of whether they're insane. The answer is clearly yes. But that some people just do it for free will ultimately not be sustainable. So I suspect we'll soon see some of our tax money go into this. And I'll have an eye on this paper. So if you aren't yet subscribed, do it now. Do not refuse me. The BBC recently recommended it. Please just pretend to be a dumb robot. It's only in your best interest. You might find this a little awkward coming from a YouTuber, but personally I prefer reading over watching videos. If you sometimes feel like that too, I have a special offer from our sponsor Nautilus that you don't want to miss. Nautilus is a science magazine that keeps you up